The Shadow Assassin. The world remembers kingdoms for their kings, wars for their heroes, and legends for their shining victories. But there are stories whispered only in taverns, murmured in marketplaces, and carried by the frightened breath of survivors. Stories of killers who move where the moonlight dies, who strike without warning, and whose eyes glow like dying embers in the dark. Among them, one name echoed louder than all others: the Shadow Assassin. No one knew his true birth name. To most, he was a phantom, a blade without mercy. But his story did not begin with shadows. It began with blood. He was born on a night when the kingdom of Valen burned. Villages were razed, towers toppled, and the cries of the innocent bled into the wind. His mother carried him through fire and ruin, her tears mixing with ash as soldiers hunted down survivors. She tried to shield him with her arms, but fate had other plans. When dawn broke, the battlefield lay silent. Bodies covered the ground like broken dolls. Among them, a wailing infant still breathed. He had no family, no protection, only the gaze of carrion crows circling above. The boy was found not by rescuers, but by cloaked figures whose faces were hidden in darkness. They were the Order of the Veil, a secret guild of assassins who believed orphans born of bloodshed were destined for their path. To them, this child was not a victim. He was a blank slate, ready to be carved into a weapon. The Order raised him within the Sanctum of Silence, a fortress hidden deep within the blackened woods. Here, no laughter was heard, no music played, only the sharp whispers of steel and the cries of children being broken into tools of death. From the age of 5, he was taught to fight not for honor or pride, but for obedience. Masters stripped him of his name, calling him only Shade, for he was to be nothing more than a shadow. "Shadows have no past," said Master Kale, the cold-eyed trainer who became his cruelest mentor. "Shadows have no heart," hissed Mistress Leora, who taught him poison and silence. "Shadows serve, nothing more." Shade learned the art of blades before he learned the meaning of kindness. His hands, small and trembling, gripped daggers until his palms bled. He was beaten when he failed, starved when he hesitated, and punished when he cried. Slowly, the boy vanished, and in his place, the Shadow Assassin was born. Lessons in Death. The training of the Order was merciless. Children were pitted against each other in contests where the weak were cast aside, or worse. Shade learned to fight blindfolded, to balance on rooftops in storm winds, to kill with silence as his only companion. He was taught to see the world not as it was, but as prey. Every step, every breath, every flicker of light was a weakness to exploit. He learned that fear was a weapon, sharper than any blade. One of his earliest lessons stayed with him forever. Master Kale placed a cage before him with a small bird trapped inside. "Kill it," Kale commanded. Shade hesitated, staring at the tiny creature fluttering in panic. His heart pounded, not out of fear, but because for the first time he held another life in his hands. When he refused, Kale struck him down and left him bleeding. For 3 days, Shade was given no food, no water, only the sight of the bird dying slowly in the cage. On the 4th day, another child slit the bird's throat without hesitation, and was rewarded. Shade learned his lesson. Never hesitate, never question. Shadows obey. By the time he reached his 15th year, Shade was no longer a boy. He had become something else, faster than sight, colder than steel. The Order gifted him his first mask, a face of obsidian carved with the faint image of a serpent, glowing faintly red under the moonlight. "This mask is not for hiding," Mistress Leora whispered. "It is for becoming. When you wear it, you are no longer yourself. You are death." The mask became his second skin. With it, Shade shed the last fragments of innocence. He became a tool sharpened by cruelty, honed by silence. The villagers of Valen began to whisper of a figure seen only in moments of dread, a shadow that crept along rooftops, a whisper before the cut of a blade, Some called him a demon. Others prayed never to cross his path. The legend of the shadow assassin was taking shape. His first mission came on a night of heavy rain. The order sent him to silence a noble who dared betray their secret alliances. The target was no warrior, no knight, just a man sleeping beside his wife and child. Shade crept into the chamber with movements as fluid as smoke. His dagger hovered above the man's throat. He remembered Master Kale's words, "Hesitation is death." But as lightning flashed through the window, he saw the child curled against the father, sleeping peacefully. Memories stirred, memories of his own childhood, lost in fire and screams. For the briefest moment his hand trembled. He clenched his jaw, forced the weakness away, and struck. The blade cut silently, and the noble's last breath vanished beneath the storm. Shade left the chamber without looking back. He told himself he felt nothing. Yet, as he slipped into the night, the image of the sleeping child burned in his mind like a curse. From that night forward, missions followed one after another. Nobles, generals, priests, even kings, none were beyond the order's reach. Wherever betrayal, rebellion, or whispers of defiance arose, Shade was sent to silence it. With each kill, his name grew darker, his legend stronger. To the world, he was the hand of vengeance. To the order, he was their most loyal blade. But inside him, a fracture grew. For every scream he silenced, for every family he shattered, the buried voice of his honor whispered louder. A voice that asked, "What am I? A man? A weapon? Or a shadow with no soul?" The shadow assassin. Years passed, and Shade's name became synonymous with fear. Mothers used his legend to quiet their children. Behave, or the shadow assassin will come for you. Soldiers whispered his deeds around campfires. Even kings shuddered when hearing rumors of the Order of the Veil. One of his most infamous missions was the assassination of Duke Reynold the Crimson, a warlord who had once stood defiant against the Order. Reynold's fortress was said to be impenetrable, its walls lined with mercenaries, its gates sealed with iron, and its halls crawling with guards. But walls meant nothing to shadows. Shade entered the fortress by scaling its stone walls during the darkest hour of night. Rain poured, thunder rolled, yet his steps made no sound. He slipped past sentries, poisoned wine, and silenced guards with precise strikes. By the time he reached the Duke's chamber, the fortress was already unraveling into chaos. Reynold awoke to find a masked figure standing at his bedside, blade gleaming in the flicker of torchlight. "Please," the Duke whispered, clutching a medallion shaped like a lion. "Spare me, and I will pay you more than they ever could." Shade tilted his head, studying the man's trembling face. For a flicker of a second, he thought of his own life. How fate had never given him a choice. But the Order's teachings thundered within his skull. Shadows do not bargain. Shadows do not pity. The blade descended, and silence reclaimed the room. When Shade returned to the sanctum, his masters praised him, showering him with gold and whispered promises of honor. Yet when he closed his eyes that night, he saw the Duke's fear, not of death, but of leaving unfinished oaths, of leaving his people behind. Shade's heart, though buried beneath years of cruelty, had not fully died. Each mission etched scars into his soul, scars that no mask could hide. When he killed generals, he saw the loyalty of their soldiers, still fighting for their memory. When he poisoned priests, he saw the tears of believers who cried out for divine justice. When he slaughtered rebels, he saw the fire of freedom burning in their eyes, even in their last moments. Was he serving justice? Or was he only a pawn in endless games of power? These thoughts, dangerous as poison, gnawed at him silently. The true fracture came when the Order sent him to assassinate Lady Serenia of Dawnspire, a noblewoman beloved by her people. Unlike other targets, she was no traitor, no warrior, only a healer who had opposed the Order's secret manipulation of the kingdom. Shade followed her for nights, watching her move through the city of Dawnspire. She fed the poor, tended to the sick, and prayed for those who cursed her. Even when stones were thrown at her by angry mobs blaming her for their hunger, she stood tall, offering forgiveness. Shade was ordered to strike during the Festival of Lanterns when her presence would be most visible. The night came. Lanterns floated into the sky, casting golden light across the city. Serenia stood on the balcony of her palace, her voice carrying warmth as she blessed her people. Shade crept into position, his dagger ready. One strike, one breath, and her light would be snuffed out forever. But something inside him froze. He remembered the caged bird. He remembered the noble's child. He remembered the duke's trembling hand clutching the medallion. And now, staring at Serenia, he realized he was about to extinguish not just a life, but hope itself. For the first time, he lowered his blade. Serenia turned as if sensing his presence. Her eyes met his through the mask, eyes filled not with fear, but with sorrow. "I know who you are," she whispered. "The blade of the Order, the shadow in the night." Shade stiffened, prepared for screams, for guards, for resistance, but instead she stepped closer, her hand trembling yet steady. "I do not fear you," she said softly, "but I pity you, for you are as much a prisoner as I am." Her words struck deeper than any weapon. Shade fled into the night, leaving his mission incomplete. For the first time, he had defied the Order. The Order did not tolerate failure. When Shade returned, he was summoned before the Council of the Veil, cloaked figures whose eyes glimmered with cold fire. "You disobeyed," Master Kale spat. "You betrayed your vow." Shade stood silent, his mask hiding the turmoil inside him. Mistress Leora's voice dripped with venom. "Hesitation is weakness. Weakness is betrayal. Betrayal is death." Shade braced for punishment, but instead, Kale leaned forward, his smile cruel. "You are too valuable to kill. But remember this, Shade. One more act of disobedience, and the shadows themselves will devour you." They spared him, but only to use him again. Shade left the chamber with his life intact, but his soul in pieces. Despite the warning, Shade could not erase Serenia from his mind. He returned to Dawnspire, this time not as a killer, but as a silent watcher. He saw her tending to plague victims, blessing children, and feeding the hungry with her own hands. He felt something he had never known before, something forbidden to shadows. Hope. For the first time, he wondered if there was a path beyond death and duty, a path not carved by the Order's blades, but by his own choice. Yet he also knew the truth. Such a path would not come without blood. The Order had bound him with oaths stronger than chains. If he turned against them, they would send every blade, every shadow, every assassin to hunt him down. And so, Shade stood at the edge of choice, between the life of a weapon or the fight for his soul. The breaking point Shade's reputation had made him a legend, yet his heart was slowly slipping away from the Order's grasp. Every mission, every strike, every life taken weighed heavier than the last. And in the silence of night, Serenia's words haunted him. "You are as much a prisoner as I am." The Order, unaware of the depth of his doubt, gave him a mission unlike any before, to raise Dawnspire itself. No longer just an assassination. This time, the Order demanded genocide. The mission of fire. The Council of the Veil gathered in the shadowed hall of obsidian stone. Master Kale's voice thundered like steel striking steel. "Dawnspire has grown bold. Its light spreads too far. Burn it. Leave no stone, no soul." The other masters nodded, their faces hidden beneath silver masks. Mistress Leora leaned forward, her eyes glinting like knives. "And the Lady Serenia," she hissed, "bring her head as proof." Shade's stomach tightened, though no flicker of emotion betrayed his face. He bowed, received the blood-sealed scroll, and left the chamber. But in that moment, his oath to the Order began to shatter. The night of betrayal. Dawnspire slept beneath a moonless sky, its lanterns glowing like stars fallen to earth. Shade moved through its streets with his usual silence, but his heart thundered louder than his footsteps. He reached the palace gates where Serenia stood, speaking to the night guards, ensuring food for the poor even at this late hour. Shade should have slipped his dagger into her back. Instead, he stepped forward, unmasked. Serenia froze, her eyes widening. "You," she whispered. "I was sent to kill you," Shade said, his voice low but steady, "and to burn this city to ash." The guards drew their blades, but Serenia raised her hand. Her eyes never left his. "Then why are you here warning me?" Shade looked away, his hand trembling on the dagger's hilt. "Because I cannot be their blade any more. I will not destroy what little light remains in this cursed world." Serenia's breath caught, and for the first time she smiled at him, not with pity, but with trust. "You have chosen," she whispered, "then stand with us." The Wrath of Shadows. By sparing Dawnspire, Shade declared war on the Order. The Council's fury was swift. The moment they learned of his betrayal, the bells of the sanctum tolled with an ominous chime. The decree echoed through every hidden lair, every assassin's ear. The Shadow. Assassin is no longer ours. He is prey. Hunt him until he is nothing but a memory. The very blades he once trained beside, the brothers and sisters he once bled with, now turned against him. The hunt begins. Shade fled Dawnspire with Serenia's blessing and the supplies she pressed into his hands. But he did not flee alone. He was always pursued. The first wave of assassins struck in the Valley of Whispers. Dozens of hooded killers ambushed him in the ruins of an abandoned monastery. Their blades gleamed silver, their movements as silent as his own. The fight was chaos incarnate. Steel clashed with steel. Shadows struck shadows. Shade moved like a storm, his daggers spinning in arcs of death. He struck low, fast, merciless. But unlike before, his strikes were not for the Order. They were for survival. When the dust settled, the ground was littered with lifeless forms. Shade stood panting, his cloak torn, his mask cracked. For the first time, he realized the truth. The hunters would never stop. To live free, he must bring the fight to the heart of the Order itself. The assassin's doubt. In the nights that followed, Shade wandered across broken roads, hunted by his own kind. Every inn he entered, he felt eyes watching. Every village he passed through, corpses followed. Yet still he could not escape Serenia's influence. Her kindness lingered in his thoughts, softening the hardened edges of his soul. Could a blade become more than a weapon? Could a shadow find light? These questions burned as fiercely as the wounds across his body. The message in blood. One night, while resting in a cave, Shade awoke to find a symbol carved into the stone beside him, the mark of the Order, a veiled eye. His heart sank. They had found him again. But instead of a silent ambush, he found a single assassin waiting outside. A girl, barely 16, her hands trembling as she held a dagger. "I was sent to kill you," she whispered, her voice breaking. Shade lowered his blades. "What is your name?" She flinched. "Names mean nothing. I am a shadow." He saw himself in her, the frightened child stolen from a family molded into death. "Then take mine," he said softly and dropped his dagger at her feet. "And if you must kill me, make it quick. But know this, you are more than what they made you." Her eyes filled with tears. For a long moment, her dagger shook in her hands. Then, slowly, she dropped it and fled into the night. Shade stared into the darkness, knowing the message was clear. Even within the Order's ranks, doubt could be sown. The enemy within. By defying the Order openly, Shade had not only marked himself as prey but also planted the seed of rebellion. Assassins who once served blindly now whispered his name. not as a monster, but as a man who broke his chains. The council knew this too. Shade was no longer just a traitor. He was a symbol, and symbols were more dangerous than swords. Master Kale snarled within the sanctum, his voice echoing across the chamber. If he wishes to tear down the veil, then let him drown in his own shadow. Send the Wraith. The Wraith, an assassin said to be the deadliest weapon of the Order, a ghost of vengeance who had never failed. Shade's final hunt had begun. The Whisper of Fear. Across the land, whispers spread like wildfire. The shadow assassin, the very weapon of the Order, had broken his chains. Some called him a traitor, others a savior. But within the Sanctum of Veils, no whispers existed, only fury. The masters gathered in their obsidian chamber, their masks glowing faintly in the candlelight. Master Kale's voice thundered, "He defies us. He dares to sow rebellion among our shadows. He must not be allowed to live another breath." Mistress Leora leaned forward, her words dripping venom. "Send the Wraith." The chamber fell silent. For centuries, the Wraith had been the Order's ultimate blade, a phantom whose kills were swift, silent, and absolute. No prey had survived the Wraith's pursuit. And now, Shade, the assassin who once struck fear into kings, would become the hunted. The shadow of death approaches. The night was still, the forest heavy with fog. Shade moved carefully, his senses sharp, but deep within he knew. The Wraith was already near. Every rustle of leaves, every shift in the mist felt like a blade brushing against his throat. The hunter had become the prey. He recalled the whispers of recruits in the Order's training halls. "The Wraith isn't human," they had said. "He's a ghost, a shadow made flesh." Shade tightened his grip on his daggers, his heartbeat steady despite the dread. "I've slain kings, toppled generals, shattered armies. If the Wraith is flesh, I will break him. If he is shadow, then I will become darker still." The first clash. The attack came without warning. A blade of pure silence swept toward Shade's throat. He ducked, sparks flying as steel kissed steel. The Wraith emerged from the mist, cloaked in black, face hidden by a silver mask etched with runes of death. His movements were unnaturally fast, like liquid shadow flowing across the earth. Their blades collided again and again, sparks painting the night like falling stars. Shade moved with precision, his daggers slashing in deadly arcs. But the Wraith matched him blow for blow. Every strike met, every thrust countered. For the first time in years, Shade felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. Battle in the mist. The duel raged across the forest. They moved like demons, blades flashing in the fog, the clash of steel echoing through the night. Shade struck low, feinting toward the Wraith's ribs, only to be met with a counterstrike so fast it nearly pierced his heart. He rolled away, his cloak torn, blood seeping into the earth. The Wraith's voice hissed through the mask, cold and inhuman. "You cannot escape your nature, Shade. You are death, nothing more." Shade spat blood, rising to his feet. "No, I was death. But now, I choose what I kill." The forest seemed to hold its breath. The Wraith unmasked. In the midst of battle, Shade managed to drive his dagger across the Wraith's mask, cracking it. The silver fell away, revealing not a ghost, but a man. His eyes were pale and lifeless, his face scarred beyond recognition, as if death itself had carved him. It was then Shade understood the truth. The Wraith was not a phantom. He was what Shade could have become had he never broken free. A soulless blade, nothing more. The realization cut deeper than any wound. The turning of the duel. The Wraith lunged, his blade grazing Shade's side. Pain flared, but Shade used the moment to trap the Wraith's wrist, twisting with brutal force. Bones cracked. Their blades locked, faces inches apart. The wraith's breath was ragged, his eyes filled not with rage, but emptiness. "You cannot kill me," the wraith whispered. "I am you." Shade's heart thundered. "Then let this be my death, and my rebirth." With one final strike, Shade drove his dagger through the wraith's chest. The pale assassin staggered, his lifeless eyes finally closing. For the first time, silence surrounded him. Not the silence of death, but of release. The fall of the sanctum. Word of the wraith's death spread like wildfire. The Order's assassins, those who once worshipped fear, began to whisper rebellion. Shade struck swiftly, moving against the sanctum itself. With a band of defectors at his side, those he had spared, those who now believed, he stormed the obsidian hall where the council gathered. The battle was merciless. Shadows clashed with shadows. Brothers fought brothers. The sanctum, once unshakable, crumbled under the weight of its own darkness. Shade faced Master Kale in the final chamber, their blades crossing in a storm of sparks. "You betrayed everything," Kale roared. "I betrayed nothing," Shade replied coldly. "I only reclaimed myself." With a final strike, Kale fell. The reign of the Order was broken. The dawn after darkness. When the battle ended, silence fell upon the shattered sanctum. The assassins who survived stood in the ruins, masks broken, chains shattered. Shade looked upon them, not as enemies, but as brothers and sisters who had been enslaved, as he once was. "The Order is dead," he said. His voice carried across the hall. "But the shadows remain. Choose what you will do with them. Kill in chains or live in freedom." One by one, the assassins dropped their weapons, and in that moment, the shadow assassin was no longer a symbol of fear. He was a symbol of rebellion. Epilogue: The Legend of Shade. In the years that followed, bards sang of Shade's deeds. Some said he vanished into the wilderness, seeking redemption for the lives he had taken. Others claimed he became a guardian of Dawnspire, watching from the shadows to protect what light remained. But all agreed on one truth. The shadow assassin was more than a killer. He was the proof that even in the deepest darkness, honor and choice could survive. And his legend endured, whispered in taverns, sung in ballads, feared by tyrants. The man who was trained to be death itself became something greater. The Silence. After war. The sanctum lay in ruins, its obsidian walls cracked and bleeding with fire. The air smelled of ash, blood, and freedom. Shade stood amidst the rubble, his body broken, his cloak torn to rags. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what he had done. The Order was no more. Its chains shattered, its secrets spilled into the world. But with its fall came silence. A silence so heavy it felt like the earth itself was holding its breath. For the first time in years, Shade was no longer a weapon. He was a man. The Choice of Shadows. Survivors of the Order gathered before him. Young assassins, once orphans, stolen as he was. They looked to him not as a master, but as a guide. One boy, no older than 14, stepped forward. His mask was broken, his eyes hollow. "What do we do now?" he whispered. Shade studied their faces, the lost, the frightened, the free. He knew what he wanted to say, but the words caught in his throat. He had no kingdom, no throne, no prophecy to offer them. Only truth. "You are free," Shade said at last, his voice steady. "Free to choose who you are. Kill if you must, but let it be your choice, not theirs. Live in darkness if you wish, but let it be yours, not theirs. You are no longer shadows in chains. You are your own." The boy's eyes glimmered. Slowly, he dropped his dagger to the ground. Others followed. The sound of steel falling upon stone echoed like a hymn. The path of redemption. Shade did not stay to rule them. Leadership was never his purpose. Instead, he disappeared into the world beyond Dawnspire. Some said he wandered the ruins of battlefields, burying the nameless dead with his own scarred hands. Others claimed he became a phantom protector, striking down tyrants and despots under moonless skies. And some whispered that he returned to Serenia, though no one knew if he stayed. Whatever the truth, his name became more than a curse. It became a story. The legend spreads across the kingdoms, taverns filled with songs of the Shadow Assassin. Some called him a traitor who destroyed the greatest order of killers ever known. Others named him a savior who freed children from a life of chains. But in every story, whether sung by bards or whispered by thieves, one thing was certain. Shade had defied fate. He had broken the cycle. He had turned shadow into choice. The final vision. Years later, in a village far from Dawnspire, a child played with a wooden dagger in the streets. An old man watched from the shadows of a crumbling wall, his cloak dark, his eyes hidden beneath the hood. The boy laughed, pretending to fight invisible foes. Then he turned and froze. The old man's gaze had fallen upon him. The hooded figure stepped forward, kneeling, placing a real dagger, dull and harmless, into the boy's hands. "Remember," the man said softly, his voice worn with years but steady. "A blade is only what you make of it. Use it to protect or to destroy. That choice will always be yours." The boy stared, wide-eyed, as the hooded man turned and vanished into the dusk. The villagers would later say the man's eyes glowed faintly in the fading light, like shadows kissed by fire. Eternal shadow. Eternal honor. The Shadow Assassin was never seen again. But his story outlived kingdoms, outlasted empires, and spread across generations. To warriors, his tale was a lesson in loyalty. To rulers, a warning of rebellion. To the lost, a beacon of hope. And though Shade himself vanished into legend, one truth endured, carved into the memory of men. Even those born in darkness can choose the light. Even a blade meant only for death can carve a path of honor. The Shadow. Assassin's name became eternal.